Wysteria, energy, twister.
Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and the A to Z of Fairies Encyclopedia of the Fairies. The next we are on is Alp Luachra. Alp Luachra. Believed by some to be a natural illness described in folklore, and by others to be a kind of fairy being. Rev Kirk equates it to the Scottish joint eater, a salamander-like creature that sneaks into the open mouth of a sleeping person if they are lying near water, and afterwards resides within them. The Alp Luachra consumes the food the person eats, so that the person in turn becomes ill and wastes away. Douglas Hyde speaks of it in his book, where a person afflicted by one is described this way. I tell you again, and believe me, that it's an Alp Luachra you swallowed. Didn't you say yourself that you felt something leaping in your stomach the first day after you being sick? That was the Alp Luachra. And as the place he was in was strange to him at first, he was uneasy in it, moving backwards and forwards. But when he was a couple of days there, he settled himself, and he found the place comfortable. And that's the reason you keep him so thin. For every bit you're eating, the Alp Luachra is getting the good out of it. And you said yourself that one side of you was swelled. That's a place where the nasty thing is living. Hyde, 1890. In Hyde's account, the person finds no relief from doctors, but is eventually led by a beggar, said to be more knowledgeable in this kind of illness, and who has the cure. The ill man is fed a great amount of heavily salted meat, and then instructed to lay down by a stream with his mouth open. After waiting for a long time, the Alp Luachra, there are more than a dozen, who are thirsty from the salt, are driven out of the person by the smell of the water. This is considered the standard cure for these beings in folklore, as nothing else will get them to depart the person's body willingly. And that's what Briggs says about it in 1976. But again, they're also very similar to the joint eater also. So obviously there are a few different ones there. Then we move on to the Amadanna Bruidni, the fairy fool. The two most dangerous fairies in folklore, arguably, may be the fairy queen and the fairy fool, both of whom are said to bring madness with a touch. The fairy queen may be the more well-known, with a good amount of folklore to be found about her under either the title or specific name, while the fairy fool is not as well known. Although usually simply called the fairy fool in English, in Irish we find at least two distinct types of fairy fools. The Amaden na Brudni, fool of the fairy hall, and Amadin Moor, great fool. The Brudni inspired terror because one touch from him could paralyze a person, drive them mad, or even kill them. There, in some debate about whether his touch was the fairy stroke or a different type of power, but since madness, paralysis and death and things of that variety of fairies can cause, it's hard to be certain. Unlike the illnesses caused by other types of fairies, however, the damage caused by the touch of the fairy fool was impervious to any magical or herbal cures, which is part of why he's especially feared. In contrast to the Amaden na Brudni, the Amad Moor is a more elusive figure who may appear as a king of the fairies or leading the fairy host, but was still associated with the fearsome qualities of the fairy fool. It's always risky, of course, to run into any of the fairy folk, but the fairy fool represented a particular danger. As in related by Yeats, quoting someone he had interviewed. They, the other sort of people, might be passing you close here, and they might touch you, but any that gets the touch of the Amadan Nabrini, fairy fool, is done for. By some accounts, every group of fairies counted among their numbers both a queen and a fairy fool. That was what Yeats said. The Queen of Elfland is discussed elsewhere and established as a very powerful being, along with the Queen, though we see the Fool described as just an ubiquitous fairy and equally powerful in a different way, because the Fools bring incurable madness to those who touch. The fairy fool can be male or female, but it's the male fool that is more commonly seen in stories. The male fool was described appearing in the form of a sheep with a herd, or as a half-naked person with great strength and distorted features. That was also said by Yeats in 1962. Other folklore said that the fairy fool was a shapeshifter, who could change shape every couple of days between a young seeming human form to that of an animal. However, in any form, try to touch a person and drive them mad. Despite these seemingly fluid forms and variety of appearances, the Amaden na Bruni in a folklore seems to have been easily recognised for what he was by those who saw him, perhaps indicating that he has an aura of otherworldliness or madness to him that humans could perceive. Seeing the fairy fool in and of itself presents no danger, and there are stories of those who saw the fool and managed to escape or avert him without being harmed. However, if he did succeed in touching the person, they would go mad. Even if they lived for years afterwards, there would be no cure for the fool's touch. When the Amadena Bruni appeared, he might be seen by a person travelling alone or by a person among a group, even though the rest of the group saw nothing. Yeats related one story of the fairy fool in his book, Celtic Twilight, told to him by an old woman in the 19th century. He was a boy I knew well, and he told me that one night a gentleman came to him that had been his landlord, and that was dead, and he told him to come along with him, for he wanted him to fight another man. And when he went, he found two great troops of them, fairies, and the other troop had a living man with them too, and he was put to fight him, and they had a great fight, and he got the better of the other man, and then the troop on his side gave a great shout, and he was left home again. But about 3 years after that, he was cutting bushes in a wood, and he saw the Amadan coming at him. He had a big vessel in his arms, and it was shining, so that the boy could see nothing else. But he put it behind his back then and came running, and the boy said he looked wild and wide, like the side of the hill. And the boy ran, and he threw the vessel after him, and it broke with a great noise. And whatever came out of it, his head was gone there and then. He lived for a while after, and used to tell us many things, but his wits were gone. He thought they mightn't have liked him to beat the other man. That was by Yeats also in 1962. According to Yeats, the Sorcerer's June was the most dangerous month for fairy encounters, because apparently in June, the activity of a fairy fool is absolutely increased. What it means, by the way, when the story says he lost his head, it does not mean he physically lost his head. It means he lost his mind, his mental state, because of the touch from the fairy fool. So it's not the fact that the vessel broke and his head came off. It's when the vessel broke, the fairy fool had that he heard something, or something then caused his mind to break, so his mental stability to break, not the literal coming off of his head. Also, there is a couple of ways of spelling the Brini. I'll pop it in the description because it's spelt the Brani and the Brini, but it is the same. So I'll pop those in the description in case anybody's curious to what I mean by that. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the many fairies we are learning about. Please hit the like, share if you can, and also do consider subscribing. All of these are completely free and they do really help the channel. Thank you so much and many blessings.
Wysteria, energy, twister.